It's one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. What happened to labor leader Jimmy Hoffa? The FBI believes Hoffa was murdered by mobsters back in 1975, in part because of what he knew about the mob in Las Vegas. Now, someone has stepped forward to tell what really happened on the day Hoffa disappeared. The man who's talking says he's the person who pulled the trigger. George Knapp of the I-Team is here with the story. George.
Well, Paul and Dave, it isn't too often that a mafia hitman comes forward to reveal details about murders carried out for organized crime. The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa was one of the biggest crimes of the last century, one with roots right here in Las Vegas. The person who killed the Teamster boss was someone Hoffa trusted. And in a deathbed confession, the hitman explained why Hoffa had to go.
They chant Jimmy, 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 and jubilant Jimmy Hoffa sweeps in.
From the mid-50s through the mid-70s, Jimmy Hoffa was a rock star of organized labor, as well known as Elvis or the Beatles. His rapid ascent through the ranks of the Teamsters Union was made possible in part by friendships Hoffa forged with high-ranking organized crime figures across the country. They helped keep Hoffa in power. In return, he allowed the mob to use the Teamsters pension fund as its own bank. Tens of millions of dollars were loaned to mob-owned casinos in Las Vegas.
It got the town started. Before banks would loan money to casinos, before Wall Street and public equity, public debt funds were available, that's where you got money to start building casinos.
But for Jimmy Hoffa, I don't think any of this would have happened.
Former prosecutor and homicide investigator Charles Brandt thinks Hoffa probably deserves a statue in Las Vegas because of what the pension fund loans meant to the town, even though the loans came with unwritten strings attached. The casinos that took the loans allowed the gangsters to skim millions of dollars as part of the deal. Like the rest of the country, Brandt is fascinated by the disappearance of Hoffa back in 1975. But unlike most, Brandt says he knows what happened on that fateful day. The man who killed Hoffa, he says, is former Teamster official Frank Sheeran. He knows because Sheeran told him, as detailed in the book, I Heard You Paint Houses.
In 1957, Jimmy Hoffa had become president of the Teamsters, and he wanted to consolidate his power, and he needed some muscle. He contacted mob boss Russell Bufalino, who was one of his closest allies in the mafia, looking for muscle. Russell put Sheeran on the phone with Hoffa, and the first words that Hoffa uttered to Frank Sheeran were, I heard you paint houses. And that means you kill people. The paint is the blood that spatters on the walls and the floor. And Sheeran said, I do my own carpentry work too. That means you dispose of the bodies.
Frank the Irishman Sheeran, a mountain of a man, was a professional killer who worked mostly for Russell Bufalino, one of the top mafia bosses in the country. In the 1970s, Sheeran was listed as one of the only non-Italian La Cosa Nostra figures in the U.S. In all, Sheeran's believed to have murdered more than 24 people. Sheeran was the Luca Brasi to Bufalino's Don Corleone. When Bufalino told Sheeran to report to work for Jimmy Hoffa, Sheeran says he started doing hits on behalf of the Teamsters. As a thank you, Jimmy Hoffa created a Teamsters local in Delaware and put Sheeran in charge. Sheeran and Hoffa became very close.
He became Hoffa's trusted East Coast guy. He traveled with Hoffa. They did an awful lot together. Sheeran loved Hoffa. Sheeran said to me that when it's time for you to go, they'll send your best friend. You'll be talking about a football bet, and the next thing you know, you'll be dead. And they selected Sheeran to kill Hoffa because at the time, Hoffa was very leery. He knew that he had enemies that wanted him dead.
Hoffa was sent to prison for jury tampering and planned to return to power upon his release. According to Brandt, Hoffa arranged a $500,000 bribe to the Nixon administration, money that was skimmed from Las Vegas casinos and delivered to Nixon's Attorney General John Mitchell by none other than Frank Sheeran. Nixon then pardoned Hoffa, but rival Frank Fitzsimmons had become the Teamster president and wouldn't step aside for Hoffa. The mob was concerned that the headstrong Hoffa might spill the beans about the dirty loans to Las Vegas casinos. So Bufalino and others decided Hoffa had to go, and they gave the job to Sheeran.
I'm gonna whack this guy.
At the end of Sheeran's life, as he was dying of cancer, he made a confession to Brandt on tape.
There's no question but that Frank Sheeran was telling me the truth.
Tomorrow night at 11, we'll hear Frank Sheeran, in his own words, describe what happened on the last day of Jimmy Hoffa's life, how he was murdered, and where it occurred. Then on Wednesday night at 11, we'll tell you what happened to the body. Hint, it is not under Giant Stadium. Charles Brandt, the author of I Heard You Paint Houses, will be in Las Vegas this week for a book signing event at the Reading Room at Mandalay Bay. It's slated for this Wednesday at 7 p.m. And we have some Hoffa-related links on our website, LasVegasNow.com. Fascinating story.
I'll say, what does the government think of Sheeran's story?
Well, I think that there are a handful of competing theories, of course, about exactly how Hoffa died, but FBI documents that we've obtained show that Sheeran was a prime suspect right from the beginning, although few of us have ever heard his name.
Yeah.
Those lawmen that we've talked to, including Stan Hunterton, say that Sheeran's story rings true to them, and tomorrow we'll have information corroborating Sheeran's account of this story.
Bone chilling. Yeah. Thank you, George.
All right.